Hello and welcome to Canguro English. My name is Christian and today is Wednesday, the best day of the week. Now, today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different and I'm going to be answering your questions. And so this is the first episode of Q&A with Canguro English. And our first question is this. Hi, I want to ask Christian where the word salary comes from. Okay, well, the word salary comes to us from Latin, and it has a really interesting story. Okay, so salary is the money that you get paid when you have a job. Maybe you get paid fortnightly. That is every 14 nights, fortnightly, or maybe you get paid monthly. And this word originated from the payment, the money that was given to Roman soldiers. And the clue to understanding the origin of this word is right here in sal, because the original Latin word meant salt money. It was money given to the soldiers to buy things that they needed to survive, including salt. Now maybe you're asking yourself, well, why salt? Well, you have to remember that back then, salt was a delicacy, and it was very kind of scarce and expensive. And salt contains lots of essential minerals and keeps you healthy, and also it makes food very delicious. And so that's why the Romans started to put salt in everything, including their sauces. That's why they're called salsas. And then the French took the sauces and they lost the L and they became sauce. And of course, Europeans started using salt in other things, including sausages, which in Spanish, for example, are called salchichon, or in Italian, salami. All of them related to the word salt and the salt money that you used to get paid. Next question. I really want to know how to understand the word of. Sometimes I feel like there is no need to use of. For example, 3 apples and a lot of apples. Why can't I say a lot apples? Great question. I love this question, and the answer to this question lies in the understanding of the meaning of this little word of, this beautiful preposition. What does it mean? What does of mean? Of means that something is part, belongs to something bigger. So, for example, if I have a beautiful witch and I pull some of this hay, well, this hay is of the witch. It's part of this bigger thing. And that helps us to understand why sometimes we use of with quantifiers and sometimes not. For example, here I have pencils. I have 3 pencils. So I'm talking about an absolute unit. I'm talking about these as an independent thing. I'm not talking about them as part of something bigger. I can also use other quantifiers. I could say, here I have many pencils. Many pencils. Again, without of. I'm referring to this as something independent. But imagine if I have this extra pencil, right? And I can put them in front of me. So you see I have 3 yellow and 1 white. And I say, okay, 1, again it's a number, 1 of these pencils is white. What's the difference? I'm using a number But I'm referring to this as part of a group. I'm not referring to this independently. One pencil, three pencils, one of the pencils. And again, I could say that, using of, I could say, many of these pencils are yellow. Again, I'm not referring to these independently, I'm referring to them as part of the group. Next question. Hi buddies, the sentence "I will see when I'm finished with work" is grammatically correct. I want to talk a little bit about the word when. This is a great word, when. And if you think about what it means, when, it means that we are using our imagination to imagine a time, right? When I am old, when I have €1,000,000, when I go to Italy. Okay, it's all about imagination. Imagination related to time. And there's another structure in English that uses imagination, and that is our if structure. If is basically the same as when. If is engaging imagination for different scenarios. I could say the same thing. If I am in Italy, if I have €1,000,000, if I go to class. And in fact, in German, if doesn't exist. They say when to make conditionals. So it's a great way to help you to understand conditionals. So let's look at your exact sentence. I will see when I'm finished with work. Well, if you look at it, the structure is identical to the second conditional. I will see when I finish work. I could also say, using a conditional structure, if I am finished work, I will see. Exactly the same meaning. I hope that helps. The next question is from an English teacher in Iran. There are many verbs which are intransitive in Persian but transitive in English and vice versa. For example, the verb enjoy is transitive in Persian, whereas it's intransitive in English. The Persian speakers know exactly why a verb needs an object in their mother tongue, and they treat English based on the same logic that helps them realize whether or not an object is needed in Persian. I know that we need to learn to think in English, but maybe if Persian speakers know the logic and reason behind why a verb is transitive, intransitive in English, it'll help them to understand those verbs with no confusion. So, I have a few things to say about this. The first thing is that you don't need to think in English. In fact, the science tells us that trying to think in English or any other language you're learning, number one is impossible, and number two is counterproductive. You see, the brain is a machine for making relations, making connections. And when you try to cut those connections between your native language and another language you're learning, well, that's actually really bad for your brain. What you want to do is understand how the languages are similar and how they're different. But let me try and specifically answer your question about transitive and intransitive verbs. Now, it's important to remember that Persian is actually an Indo-European language, which means that it's really closely related to English and Spanish and French, and not at all related to Arabic. So there are some really important grammatical similarities between the way that English works and the way that Persian works. But is there a logic about which verbs are transitive and which verbs are intransitive? Well, the answer is no, because languages are kind of messy, and they are part of history and culture, and history and culture is different in every place in the world. But there is something important to know about English transitive and intransitive verbs, and that is that they are much more flexible than you probably realize. So for example, I have here this list of intransitive verbs from the website Grammar Monster. And if I look at the list, well, the first thing I notice that a lot of these intransitive verbs are not very common verbs. For example, the verb to roost. I don't think that that's a verb that you're going to use that often. Now, the other thing you'll notice on the list is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these common intransitive verbs can also be transitive. But then when I look at the list again, I can count another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 verbs that I also see being used as transitive verbs. For example, disappear. You can say that the magician disappeared the rabbit. Boom! Transitive. Or you might say that nest. He nested the tables inside the other tables. Or if we look at the verb to fall, we have the verb fell. He fell the tree. Well, actually, they're actually the same verb. That's how we used to make verbs in Old English, by changing the vowel sound. So, of this list of common intransitive verbs, actually the majority can be both. And when you look at English verbs, you'll actually find that most verbs can be both. There's much more flexibility than you realize. And remember that there's no actual rules. There's nobody who says, hey, this verb will always be intransitive. Okay, that's the rule. No, that's not how language works. What happens is that people who use the language decide when a verb will be transitive or intransitive. So if you, as an English teacher in Iran, if you decide to say, well, exist, you say, well, I think that it would be cool if exist became transitive. So, I existed the pen. Well, congratulations, you are now part of language change. And if other people who use English decide that that's a cool way to use the verb exist, well then, you've made a big change in English. And that's what's happening every day right now. It's a continuing process. So even if I say to you today that this is the list, it could be different tomorrow. So just keep in mind about the flexibility of language. Next question. Which one of these is correct? Our team has won the champion, or our team have won the champion. First thing, champion is the individual thing. Okay? It refers to the competitor in the competition. So you cannot win the champion, because then you would win the competitor. No. It's a different noun. You win the championship. Okay, but to answer your question, what's the difference between saying our team has won the championship or our team have won the championship? Well, has would refer to he or she or it. So it's singular, right? But have would be used for plural things like they have. So it's not a question of right or wrong, it's a question of psychology. You will find that language is really flexible in this kind of way, that a lot of the time grammar is not about right and wrong, it's about style and psychology. So when I say our team has won the championship, well, I'm viewing the team as this one unified individual thing, this team. But if I say our team have won the championship, well, the psychology is a little bit different. Have is more for they. I get this feeling of the individuals, of many people in the team. Is the general meaning the same? Yes. But it's just a little psychological difference. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this first edition of Q&A. I look forward to answering your questions in the next episode. I'm Christian, this is Canguro English, and I'll see you in class.
Cool. You know the jungle has its rules, and I just gotta keep it cool, and I'll be treated like a tool. So don't be acting like a fool.